Okay, this next one is vacation homes. So we have two individuals, they own a vacation home. During the year, they rented it for 6 weeks, and then they also used it for a little bit more than that. Here is the breakdown of what they have. Now, in your textbook, you did read all about the rules on deductibility, right? So, renting out the home for basically 15 days is our threshold. If we did not use it for any more than that for personal use, so for 14 days or less, then, and we rented it for 14 days or more, it is considered primarily rental and we can deduct the expenses. However, in this case, we rented it for more than 50, or I'm sorry, we used it for personal more than those 15 days. So we are going to have to split it. And under the method, we're going to use the tax court method. That's what they're going to tell us to use. So not a big deal. But what we have to do to start this problem is we have to figure out how many days. So let's scoot it up here and let's take a look at this. So they told us that 42 days were rental days. And then they also told us that personal days were 58 days. So that tells me rental was 42 days plus the 58 personal. That tells me that in total, I had 100 days. This is your first step. We have to figure out the number of days. And then we can go to our rules to figure out, is this primarily rental? Is it primarily personal? Or is it personal and rental? And in this case, it's personal and rental. So we are going to look at all of our expenses and split them up. All right, we are using the tax court method. So they tell us about the tax court method and the IRC method, or I think it's IRS method. Yeah. Oops, let me highlight that a different color. Okay, so here's basically what we know. With the tax court method, we get to deduct two things, mortgage interest and property taxes, using a different formula. And the rest of everything has to be used, we have to use the regular number of days rented over total days. So that's the tax court method, right? All right, so here we have mortgage interest, property taxes, insurance, utilities, repairs, and depreciation. And these are the total costs of maintaining. Oh, where did that come from? Let me get rid of that. That is the total cost of maintaining the home. So all of these are going to need to be split. So again, what we know about the tax court method is that we have mortgage interest and property taxes. Those two get to have the split of 48 rental days, 42. Geez, I'm not talking right. Over 365. The rest of these expenses are going to be the 42 over total days. I'll write that total days there. So again, rental days, of course, are my numerator, the top, and then the rest of it is determined whether it's mortgage interest or property taxes, and then the rest. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at what this looks like. And let's focus only on the Schedule E to start. Okay, so the Schedule E is my rental. What did I do? I think I did that in blue above. Okay, so this was my rental property, and we rented it for 42 days. There we go. All right, so here's what this is going to look like. Income is income. In this case, it was $890 per week, and it was 6 weeks. So that's a total of $5,340. Now, mortgage interest, the total of that was $4,200. But because we're doing the tax court method, we're going to multiply this by 42 over 365. That's the tax court method. So I would take this $4,200, multiply it by that fraction, and I get $483. I'm going to do the exact same thing for property taxes. It was $700 for property taxes. I'm going to multiply that by 42 over 365. And so my property taxes that I'll be able to deduct, $81. Now we're showing these as positive numbers in this example. So connect is even though these are expenses, so all of these items are basically expenses, right? We'll still show them as a positive number here and we'll subtract them in the end. Okay, so the rest of these, insurance, utilities, repairs, and depreciation, here's the amounts of these from above. Okay, all of these are going to be multiplied by the 42 over 100. So all of these are multiplied by 42 over 100. That's kind of hard to see. I changed my mind. Let's do it like this. All of these we're going to multiply by 42 days over 100 days. So these are our days. Now when you multiply these out, you'll get a variety of numbers. I get $504 for insurance, $1,344 for utilities, repairs $798, and depreciation, it would be $2,310. Okay, so we would get a loss. We would have a loss of $180 if I take that income and subtract all of these expenses. Now, here's the deal. Losses are not allowed on vacation homes. So in this case, because we're doing our personal rental property split. So no loss allowed on vacation homes. So here's what we do. There is a very specific order to how we deduct this. So we start with the mortgage. I think these two go together. Interest and property taxes. Let me find that spot really quick in our book. It is okay. I just want to make sure those two are lumped together really quick. So first, mortgage, interest, and property taxes, and those expenses that are directly related to the rental activity, such as management fees. Those three things, which in this case we only have two, are the first that we are allowed to deduct. So I can deduct those two first and I'm still good. Next, we get to deduct utilities, insurance, and repairs. So that would be these three items. So that's like the second thing I get to deduct. Now, the last thing that gets to be deducted would be, and this is for that personal rental split, which we decided we are in this case, is depreciation. That's the last thing. Now, because depreciation is the part that tips me over, that's the one that I'm going to change. So I'm literally going to change this amount. Let me pull up a new color. Let's do something bright so we can see it pretty well. We'll just do green. Okay, so I'm going to change because my loss cannot be a negative. I can't have a negative, so it's got to be 0. So I'm going to change this one, my depreciation, to be whatever I need it to be. So I need it to be $180 less. So instead of $2,310, it's going to be $2,000. Let me just change this really quick because it's hard to read this. Okay, it's going to be $2,000. Let's see, what is it? $2,130. Okay, so again, the way I calculated this is that because we can't have a loss, the $2,310, the last thing, which is depreciation, I'm going to take away $180, and that gives me $2,130 as my new depreciation amount. That's my new depreciation expense. That's what I'll be allowed to deduct on my Schedule E so that in the end, I'm at 0. I'm not allowed to have a loss. So that's the way these ones work. It's kind of interesting. Now, this is because it is a personal rental property split. So that's based on the 15-day rules that we read about in the chapter. In this case, because we used it personally for longer. Now, there is a lot of gray area, and I hate to talk too much about it here. Your book does discuss it a little bit, but you can read and kind of read between the lines about how you could be a bit aggressive about those personal days. So if you use your vacation home, if you go on your vacation home and you use it, and it does need to be a full days of work, and you are maintaining the home a full day of work, it does not count as a personal day. But then there's all kinds of rules about if you let your family use it, if you don't rent to the full amount, and all that fun stuff. So we're basically scratching the surface in this class because there's so much more beyond this. But we just want to get a general idea, get a basic idea of what this will look like, and then know that we need to look deeper if we've got some unfamiliar situations. Okay, so the part that we learned about in chapter 6 would be the Schedule A. What is deductible in your personal? And so here's what we know for personal deduction. So that Schedule A is your personal. All I can really deduct is mortgage interest and property taxes. That's all you can really do for your personal. So let's throw those in. Now here's how you do those. This is really important. So it's not taking the 58 days over 365 like you might think. Instead, it is just the rest. So a minute ago, we took 42 over 365 days, but using the tax court method, basically we take that full amount, so 4,200, we subtract what is considered rental, and then the rest, which is, 3,717, that would be deducted on your Schedule A. And then the same way that we would do that for property taxes, we take that total amount. So there's the total. We subtract the rental expense that we're deducting on our Schedule E, and we end up with 619 left. So that goes on the Schedule A. Okay, I don't have room to put the line numbers, but it's like line 8 and line, I think 5, somewhere in there. So there's where those go on the Schedule A. So that's our deduction. Now, I know your book talked about it, and I hope you read the little examples in your book. But remember, the tax court method is, and usually always produces the best results as long as we're itemizing. If we're not itemizing, it's not always the best. So basically what it does is it gives you less to deduct on your Schedule E. However, that helps you because we know we can only deduct up to a loss, or up to a zero, up to a break even. So we're allowed to deduct more in our lower categories, right? The 2 and the 3 that we have down there. And then we can push the rest off into the Schedule A. So we actually get more over there if we are itemizing. That's not always the case. So hopefully that is. All right, let's make sure we answered the questions because I'm not sure that I really did. Letter A says, what is the proper tax treatment using the tax court method? Okay, well that's what we did below. Letter B says, are there options available for how to allocate expenses between personal and rental? Yes, there are options. So the options would be, so this is letter B. Are there options? Yes. You can either do the tax court method or the IRS method. Okay, those two methods are allowed. The tax court method is the number of days over 365, and the IRS method is the number of rental days over total used days. Tax court typically gives you the best results. So that's why in this example they had us start with that, and that's what you would do in real life as well. Okay, and then letter C says, hey, what is the proper tax treatment if Matt and Marie, which are two different names now, rented the house for only 14 days? So if they had only rented the house for 14 days, or 14 or less, so if they had only rented it for 14 or less, it is considered primarily personal. We're going to have another example soon on this, but this is seriously mind-blowing. When you rent the house for 14 or less days, guess what? There's no deductions. But that sounds bad. However, there's also no income. That's huge, huge. No income. So here's the deal. Back in the 80s, I meant to look up the date on this and I forgot before I started recording. Back in the 80s, there was an Olympics in California. And obviously this is United States income tax, right? Rules. So basically people were renting their own personal houses for 14 days or less for a ton of money. And guess what? They didn't have to claim the income. They did not have to claim the income. Of course, they couldn't do any deductions except these two, right? Mortgage, interest, and property taxes. You can always do those, but they didn't have to claim any of the income. It's incredible. Now that's when you rent it for less than 14 days or less, and it's considered primarily personal. Remember, there's three categories: primarily personal, primarily rental, which would mean you used it 14 days or less, and then the last one, which we just did, this example, it's called let me see. I'm going to write it at the top here. This one is considered personal / rental. Sorry, I can't quite get my words out. Let's see. Let's make it big. This one ended up being personal / rental for our use. So 3 uses: personal, rental, or personal / rental. So those are the 3 options.